to the next episode of Java in the Cloud. Today, I've got Michael Whizzy, Principal Software Engineer at Motability Operations, and he's here to talk about a solution that he and his team has built at Motability Operations to help the contact center staff handle the call volume. And this is a really interesting solution that's using large language models to do summarization. So hopefully Michael's going to tell, Wizzy's going to tell us all about this today and how he built it, why he built it, some of the benefits and some of the pitfalls so we can learn from him. So Wizzy, maybe just give us an introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, so I'm Whizzy. I have been in the industry sort of since year 2K. Like it was my first job before the uni, which was the applet games for the chess, right in the middle of the dot-com burst. He always was very close to the backends. Somewhere around 2015-16, I got interest and got direct experience with Amazon Cloud, which I found absolutely amazing. So I focused on it since then. And here in the Motability Operations, I had opportunity to do some first projects in AWS Native in our company.
Fantastic. And so just before we get talking about your AI solution, just tell me a question that I always ask everyone. So can you tell me a book that's really helped your career in tech?
I've got one book which I wrote my final exams in high school about, even though this wasn't the subject, because I always try to mention it in every opportunity. It's not strictly speaking technical. It's the 19th century prose, and it's called The Doll. And it's basically currently there will be third equalization of this story in Polish movie in Netflix. And the protagonist has 100,000 followers in Facebook, even though he's long dead and he never existed. And I absolutely love this book. And this is something that really motivated me just to get engaged in life in general.
Interesting. That is one that hasn't come up yet, so we'll have to get that linked in the show notes. So yeah, send me a link later and we'll include it. Okay, so let's start talking about what you've built. So maybe give a bit of a background on, what was the problem and why did you think that you wanted to kind of dive into this area and think that you might be able to help with a technical solution?
So there are actually two separate parts of it. One is what is the actual problem on the challenge on the business side, opportunity on the business side, where we could improve our call center. And another is actually how we did come up with the technical solution for it, because they were sort of converging a few months after they started. The 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 business reason for us is that Motability Operations has one of the largest, probably the largest, I don't know. Motability Operations has 500 people in their call center. These are the people that handle the largest vehicle fleet in London, in UK. We have 800,000 people at the moment. And one of the problems it's really changing job for the specialists that work there. They're really hardworking, and the change has many different aspects, but the core of it is that they are employed for their emotional intelligence or empathy to help people, not for their tech skills or whatever is required to actually do the job. And as a part of the job is not only speaking with the customers, but it's also just dealing with a lot of helping systems and communication within the company, etc., etc. And one of the tasks it's called ACW, which is after call wrap, which is the set of things you do after the call. So you may send the email to the customer, and you always make the note in your CMS just to have a track of what the customer wanted and how you help them. So there is a history. So if the next consultant picks up this customer in 6 months' time, there's clear track of actually what was happening. Uh,
Yeah, this is all we want from call centers and interaction with companies, isn't it? I mean, it's so frustrating that, I just rang up 5 minutes ago and I discussed this. Oh, well, please tell us all about it again. I mean, no one enjoys that, do they?
I had a call that was my personal motivator. I had a call with one of the companies I was customer for. I will not mention the name, but I basically got redirected 3 different times, and every time I was asked, "Could you explain what the problem was?" in one call, just redirection. So it's a strong motivator to help this. The problem that the call center that this task of just making that note, it sounds like a small task, right? And it sounds like something uh, you wouldn't necessarily have big cognitive load just to finish it. But let's say you've got a conversation that lasts 30 minutes or half or 1 hour. How do you deal with that? Do you take the notes during the call? If you take the notes during the call, you are not 100% with the customer.
Absolutely. And just saying with, automated meeting notes for Zoom calls and things, you can be a lot more present and, have a much more engaging conversation, knowing that all of the work is going to be recorded afterwards without you having to deal with it.
Mhm. Uh, and the part of the change is also that there are like a lot of people that are very talented. One of the most talented people actually have different. They are neurodivergent. Some may really struggle with just creating the summary based on the text, even if it's very short, if it's very obvious for you and for me, it really is a big challenge for them. Or they may be dyslexic, so their notes would really be hard to read for the next person unless they spend extra time just trying to focus on it, and they would still struggle.
Yeah.
Or there may be stopovers.
Yes, like you say, they're hired for their empathy and their communication skills, and anything that you can do to help with one of their many jobs, which is the after call wrap, just means that the operations run smoother and they can help other customers instead of doing something that they don't enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
fantastic. So how did you then, start from a technical problem? What was the starting point? Because presumably you worked with a call center before and you probably had an idea of how they work, but what was the catalyst to start thinking about producing a solution?
It's really a really interesting question because it all started with there was a big spike of interest in ChatGPT back in uh, autumn 2023. So we started giving like presentations within Motability Operations on the tech huddles, what ChatGPT can do. Like, wow, it can generate the JavaScript method for you, right? It was very early versions, so it was very error prone. But basically, just realizing as a software engineers how powerful those tools will become very quickly. It was really mind blowing for us. So then our head of technology Julian organized the hackathon for all the teams in our Bristol office. So all the dev teams were sitting and they were trying to see what we can do in literally in just one day to produce something that AI could help with. And I have to admit, I wasn't one of the teams. I was just sitting them helping them with unlocking them on the AWS. So I was the enabler. But and they were really impressive. Like some people created a game in like three hours, right? Um, which was very impressive. And some teams did the summarization exactly. So we knew it was possible back then. So then in March 2024, I was assigned to call center in Bristol just to come and learn the business and what are the problems. So this is the business side where we learn. There is the technical, there's the convergence to the actual what business wanted. So it was sitting with the management of the call center, trying to understand what they see as a problem from management perspective, but it was also sitting literally next to the consultants and asking consultants.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's how we understand the domain that we're working in, isn't it? I mean, sometimes we're very removed from the customer, but being able to sit there and see how they use software is an
Did,
ideal circumstance.
did you see the so for me it means being a product engineer, right? So you are not software, you're not coder, you're not programmer. You are not limited to writing the code anymore.
Yeah, you're looking at the whole space.
So then I coming back to the project. I After like 2 weeks, we then identified that this is the part where we can help, and this is really interesting because it's a very small narrow task, but it has really huge impact if you do it properly. And for me, it was just the realization that we've got all these tools, like we can do it ourselves with AWS platform, right? And there was one technical gotcha that I would be happy to share now, which for me at some point I was running like a headless chicken because I thought something is not possible to do. So basically, the problem is we chose the way of integrating the audio rather than directly integrating. The problem I thought we could have is getting stuck with anything if we got outside of our box within the company, right? So if we need to integrate with our call center platform, then we will get stuck in meetings, discussion, because the teams have their own priorities. That's the core of the problem. Everyone works on something else. The especially if you work with the third party providers, they may have other customers, but they may focus on something that you want them to do immediately.
Yeah, so you were looking at how to keep it within your domain, within your control.
And also, yeah, technically isolated. The way of the integration, I was thinking like the only thing you really have to integrate is the audio streaming. So you need to have, if you want to record and transcribe and summarize the conversation, you need to have some way of recording this conversation in the first place when it's ongoing. So I was thinking, okay, why not just have side-by-side application that just snoops on the audio? And that's where the gotcha came, because it's probably very obvious for someone who works with the systems, anything like that, but under no operating system, under no language, you can directly access the audio from the output. You can't record the what you hear from the customer in the headset. You can record microphone even if it's used by the other application, but basically the output is not considered the input. That's the problem. So in the solution is basically there is a set of niche services that you can purchase, and our company purchased one of them, which allows you to translate system audio into system audio output into system audio input. So, it's like a cable, right? On one side you connect what should go into the headset, and on the other it looks like the microphone for your application. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And maybe, do you want to share an architecture diagram, and we'll
Sure.
start talking about how the system works
I'll
now
try.
that you've kind of fixed that early, I guess, spike that you found and solved.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great.
And just to clarify, initially it wasn't. So now it's the proper web application with the proper separation of the front end and back end. But initially, it was just a Swing application. So we came up with something like 2 days, literally. And it's mainly because I'm a dinosaur, so I know the Swing because I've been doing a project like 20 years ago in Swing. So I had full confidence that I can get into, like, if it comes to audio processing, I can literally just operate on the byte level. Just if I want to implement myself, like the noise suppression, for example. But basically, this is the architecture, and we've got a web client. So you would run application as a web page. You would use a call center platform next to it, so it's just integrated via the audio. So the call center platform is not much aware of this application. The web application would be using, so for the transcription, it connects directly to the transcribe service directly as a web client, and then for the summarization, it actually accesses the backends, which I'm hoping we'll talk about it a little bit. Which here is the Spring Boot Snapstart Lambda. via the API gateway.
So is that waiting until the end of the call to do the transcription and then sending the full transcription to API gateway?
Yes, and that's another very interesting question because we started it a year ago, where the LLM space evolves very quickly. So Amazon Bedrock is the service, is the platform for all sorts of LLMs, right? When we started, there was a Cloud Sonnet 3.0, and we actually initially tried using with Cloud Opus, which is not was the most intelligent, but it was very slow. And just I can't underline more, but every second counts in the call center. So if this summarization takes like 20 seconds or 30 seconds, it's not usable for most of the specialists, because there are very, if you spend 30 seconds additionally on the summarization, it means that you possibly could write it faster yourself, or it also means that the customer needs to wait in the queue much longer. But 30 seconds is a lot in the call center.
Yeah. So this isn't a system that needs to run in microseconds, but it doesn't need to be. I mean, every few seconds is going to be an annoyance, and then after 10, 20 seconds, it's basically not usable.
We actually, up until CloudPond 3.5, the users were sort of accepting if there was like 17 seconds, right? And then we came up with the optimization. We called it optimistic summarization, which basically, whenever you've got the discussion with the customer, there is always the farewell phrase at the end, and it comes not naturally. It's not scripted. It just comes not naturally for the specialists. It's one of the. It's mostly it's like maybe it's like up to 10, but usually it's like bye bye now, or enjoy your day or something like that. So for these farewell phrases, we decided that if we hear this in the conversation, then we will try to create the summarization just in case.
Ah, okay. So you can use that to be a little bit optimistic and start doing the work even just a few seconds probably ahead of time.
Yeah, it was like 15 seconds, but obviously the trade-off is that you have to pay 3 times as much for your summarization for using of the LLM, right? Because you may generate uh, like when specialist writes leads the conversation, it's not necessarily with a single customer. So you may have the farewell phrase in the middle of the conversation because they put the customer on hold and called some other department, for example.
Yeah.
So it does speed up a lot, but it had its trade-offs.
Yeah. But that was a trade-off that you were willing to take, and it sounds like it's a really useful one, and probably one that you can continue to track. You can probably track conversation or number of transcriptions and summarizations per conversation with a customer or for a particular call.
We started doing this, but we also and we were thinking about other workarounds. For example, you probably came across this already, but you can do the what you suggested. You can do the partial summarization, right? And you can just sort of like every 10 minutes of the conversation, you can compound the results. I mean, it's not very straightforward, but it's something in theory you could do. You just need to think about how the prompt would handle it.
Yeah, and this is still early days. I mean, you're still learning about what the best next steps are, so completely
Yeah.
understandable. So this is a really cool serverless architecture. What kind of brought you to thinking about this as a serverless solution? What are some of the traffic patterns and architectural characteristics that really drew you to a serverless solution instead of some other solution?
So the TLDR answer is that you, Mark. You drove me to this. And my so just to recap the history. So before working on this project, I have been assigned with another gentleman, Rob Polly, in Motability, as a innovation team to try AWS native, step out of the platform that was provided by our platform team and see how much the developers can improve the efficiency, but just being unlocked into AWS native. And I think for me the biggest benefit of using the serverless is that there is a total cost of ownership of something, right? If you build architecture, it's not only if you design any solution with in a cloud. If you do use managed slash serverless solution, it means that the developers need to spend less time maintaining it, meaning that effectively you don't pay for the maintenance as much and you unlock the customers to do more development. So for me, this was like a general direction. But the biggest problem with this one was that back in the day, maybe just to recap it with another thing, I really wanted to use the Spring Boot as a backend, and in a way that it's not just a single endpoint, but the whole application. So I was thinking how we can do that. The benefit for it is that you can develop your application as you would develop any other backend application in Spring Boot. You can write the test that does the REST API for the Spring Boot application, and then you just deploy it as a Lambda, and you can configure the API gateway so the endpoints actually go into the backend using the Amazon SDK. That's you're probably much more familiar than me. But if you remember, the problem we came across is the cold startup.
Yeah. Yeah, but especially within an architecture like this, where not only is it calling Bedrock, it's calling SNS, it's doing various bits for the Spring Boot framework. If you could imagine that this application, maybe before snap start, might have a 10-second cold start, which would hugely eat into the latency target of your application.
Yes, and you can argue that it's no, and only like every 50 requests from the user, right? But if it does happen, like, and all others are fast enough because they already hit the warmed up Lambda, but 1 in 50 users is affected waiting 10 seconds for whatever is the backend response, and this is a blocker, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So then we heard about the snapshot from you, and it was absolute unblocker. It was like really, really revelation that it's mostly it's simplicity of it. It's like you really can just work with Spring Boot application. You can write a test for it, and then there is a minimal amount of things to learn. Like you showed us how to use crack, for example, right? If you want to mention the crack, you probably have much more precise definition than me.
Yeah, so coordinated restore at checkpoint is a new API for snap starting or snapshotting Java applications that allows you to run Java code before and after a snapshot is restored. So I think that's one of the mechanisms that you use to improve latency.
And you can also like there's like the things to learn there. For example, that you can warm up by loading the classes, right? So it's not only by making sure that the Spring Boot application is started, but that you also sort of make the mock calls down to your persistence layer just to make sure that then if the request comes.
Yeah, exactly. So in your case, you want to be able to make calls to Bedrock quickly. So one of the things that probably isn't happening when your application is booting up is it isn't loading things like the Java networking stack. It isn't loading, TLS, subsystems. It isn't making those network connections. So if you can make those application calls to Bedrock or to some other system that you're integrating with before a snapshot is taken, it means that all of that code is class loaded, just in time compiled, meaning that on your first customer request, you're hitting all these warm paths, and everything is just so much faster. What sort of latency are you seeing for a restore now? Obviously, the Bedrock integration will take some time, but how fast is your Lambda function to restore now?
We we didn't we for this because you helped us solve the problem for actually previous application before Kit, before this application. We stopped paying attention to this metric because it's sort of irrelevant now. Like especially that the bedrock now takes at least like 4 seconds, right? With Amazon Nova Pro. Uh, so we sort of stopped paying attention to it because it wasn't a priority. But for the previous application which we developed, which was the mobile application for the company, I think we came down to something like 100 milliseconds for the cold startups. And again, I don't think we made like absolutely clean job in this matter. Like I think we could have used Crack better. Uh,
Okay,
but
fantastic.
but it was again, it was good enough to just say, okay, this is users won't see it.
And this is a call center application. So is the traffic pattern, an office-based traffic pattern? Are you seeing traffic that's starting in the morning and then ending in the afternoon?
Yes. So currently, the working hours of the call center Motability, obviously, but otherwise, just to talk about it, yes, and there is like there it goes with the spike of the calls. So there will be a lot of people calling. I think 9 a.m. just before the work. Uh, there are some calls during the lunchtime, and I believe now the closing hours are 6 p.m. So there will be still some calls that are the specialists try to have continuing the conversations that started before 6 p.m. just to not just to provide the proper service. Um, and it means that some summarizations are being done at like 6:20, for example.
Yeah. But ultimately, is that something that you basically don't have a huge amount of worry about? Is this basically ramping up and then ramping down, and scalability isn't really an issue?
That's another thing. But even if we had, even if we didn't have 500 people, even if we had 5,000 people, I would have full confidence in this solution.
Wow, that's a pretty cool statement to say.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
because like the only thing you have to think about it is when you actually hit the quotas, and quotas are purely logical for the Lambda, right, and for the API gateway. So basically, it just comes down to raising the request for Amazon saying, listen, we know we want to be able to process more traffic. We understand it will cost more money. So please just increase the quota for us for API gateway and the backend. And
Fantastic. So, I mean, lots of people probably looking at this and going, this would be really useful for, an area of the system that I'm building in my own company. Could you talk a little bit about, maybe some of the pitfalls that you found, or some of the things that you found that were useful optimizations that maybe people aren't aware of?
I can talk about pitfalls, and it will be in juxtaposition to specifically for Kubernetes in KS or whatever. So the biggest benefit is there's only few things you need to learn about the Lambda. So this is the biggest benefit. Like if you are employing person for the to work with the Kubernetes, probably the interview would be at least 20 minutes of the technical questions, right? With Lambda, it's literally you can employ anyone, you can hire anyone or invite them to the team and just give them the overview of how Lambda works. In my experience, I'm a big fan. I'm obviously biased. The pitfalls are that the Lambda is not stateful, it's stateless, right? And like this is the biggest benefit. But also, if you think about it, like recently, we were looking at how to integrate it with Launch Darkly. And feel free to correct me if I'm talking rubbish with this one. But Launch Darkly is for the Java for Spring Boot integration is stateful, meaning that it doesn't check. So just to recap what Launch Darkly is. Launch Darkly is something that allows you, just in case someone haven't used it yet. Launch Darkly is something that allows you to separate the developer releases, the code commits from the actual business feature releases. And it does so by allowing you to keep in the configuration of the business features somewhere over the internet, saying, oh, this is something we want to enable to the customers, right? Or this is
Right. Okay. So you wouldn't want that network call to be made on each Lambda request. So at the moment, if you change something in LaunchDarkly, it's very difficult for that to be updated into a stateless Lambda function.
It's actually a little bit more complicated for this one because LaunchDarkly, yes, as you said, so LaunchDarkly doesn't do the call for every time you request the feature. It actually caches this on the Spring Boot side, right? So meaning that it keeps the state, which is against the Lambda.
Yeah. So there's a trade-off between the amount of network calls to LaunchDarkly and the freshness of data kept in the cache. Yeah. So maybe you could tell me a little bit about, some of the lessons that you learned about, making a system with a large language model. What were some of the difficulties that you had working with the different models and, a non-deterministic system?
I think there is a general problem that the industry now starts to address with MCPs, which is what we are trying to do as an industry. We are trying to use the non-deterministic system as programmatic APIs, and this this has huge potential. MCPs in general, they have huge potential to automate integration, right? Because you don't have to think about the integration details so far. But just because the response can be different, it's not guaranteed. It makes it hard to predict whether something, like, you can't have the tests that running and you are saying, oh, okay, 100% coverage, everything is happy, so we are happy with the release and we are going to the release. Like, you sort of, I mean, maybe I don't see yet the solution for it, but I think this may be the challenge to be solved by the industry. For the LLMs, what it meant in particular is it's prompt engineering is always tricky. Like, you think you gave the clear instructions. It's more like we're speaking with someone who is really, really intelligent, but is autistic in a way that takes everything very literally. So the longer prompt you've got, the more, if you've got the result that just doesn't fit your expectations, the more you have to dig and see, where did I use incorrect wording, where I wasn't precise enough. And it's something.
Yes, yeah, being very specific about the expectations and what exactly you want the LLM to do.
Also for this one, not for this application, but for another POC I was doing, uh, um, the problem is the more context you give, the harder it is for the LLMs to follow the instructions. So if your prompt is focused on single task, it may work much better than if you give it wide instructions. As just for example, if you want to describe how LLM should interact with the customer
Mhm.
step by step.
And was there any kind of specialist language or specialist, things about the company or the products of the company that the large language model found hard to understand? Was it always easy to understand the product and the context of the business?
Again, so there are two parts of it. One is the vocabulary, the ubiquitous language of call center slash Motability Operations as such. And this is something that you can address with, we actually address in three different places, but basically you provide the vocabulary. So you tell the transcript, for example, oh, if you hear the let's say for example SLA. I can't think about a fitting example for Motability, but let's say SLA, service level agreement, right? If someone says SLA, don't try to figure out that it's some kind of the word, just know that it's the acronym. So this is something you can tell to Bedrock. So then the transcription is clear because Amazon Bedrock sort of knows what you expect. So this is where we put the vocabulary. We explained all the acronyms. We explained all the terms that would be very used
Ah,
very.
okay. Yep.
But it's only one part.
Yep.
Another part is when you do the summarization, you also want to, and it was specific requirement from our company to keep the acronyms widely used. So, for example, you never, even if the consultant says in transcript, if they say Motability Operations, you never want to keep it in summary as Motability Operations. It's always MO,
Right.
right? Because it's just too much notes. Like you want to keep those notes as short.
You want to really reduce the amount of words that people having to read. Yep.
Yes. So for this one, we've got explicitly add the vocabulary to the prompt for the summarization, and then just as a final cleanup, just in case because the prompt can be very long for the summarization if it includes all the conversation, we got this one sequential cleanup with the Amazon Nova Lite at the moment, which is the fastest. Which we just say, just clean up the acronyms, make sure that they're used consistently. So we do apply it in different places.
So you're actually using different models for different purposes. So you're using a larger, probably more expensive model to do the majority of the work, and then doing a sweep with a quicker model just to do a very specific task.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, fantastic. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the operational side of the system. Have you done much with metrics and dashboards or the cost of the system?
Yes. So we use the standard services from Amazon just to have the visibility. We did set up the alerts via the SNS integration with Slack, so we can see the errors in Slack if something bad is happening. But the standard dashboard, again, it was just good enough, and we can track the billing and the costs as well. So you would have, from standard dashboards, you would have the cost, you would have the volume, and you would have the error rate. So these would be the three metrics that were the most important for us. And we set up some alerts, just making sure that if we hit like 90% of the usage, the bedrock usage is quite tricky, the quota, because actually it's the single one that we found that it's not like fully flexible. My understanding is just because it's in a huge demand across the Europe, you may not necessarily have immediate quota increase if you need it. So this is what we wanted to monitor very closely, was the usage of this quota.
Right. Okay. And from a different services point of view, where where are the costs being spent?
That's something we sort of initially talked like 20 minutes ago about the LLMs we used, and I ended up in saying Cloud Sonnet 3 initially, but we actually ended up currently with Amazon Nova Pro and Amazon Lite for the final cleanup, Amazon Nova Lite for the final cleanup, and this dropped the costs of the Bedrock tenfold. So it's out of the box. Out of the box, Amazon Nova Pro is 4 times as cheap, if I remember correctly. But it's also much faster. It's good enough to make the summary, and it's much faster because it's optimized for speed. Therefore, if you remember this the workaround we did, swish slash optimization for the preemptive summarization, optimistic summarization, we don't need it anymore.
Right. Interesting.
So suddenly you slash the cost on this one as well. So currently, there's like, from project perspective, there is no costs on Bedrock. There is a cost on transcribe, and this is the
Right.
most of the cost we currently have. So the ratio of transcribe versus Bedrock is sort of like 20-1. So Bedrock is like 5% of the transcribe.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, so now there's so much focus on LLMs, and maybe there's probably an advancement to be done in transcribe. Interesting. And what about the kind of AI services against the rest of the application? What's
Uh,
the cost?
the serverless is not, it doesn't even show on the costs in the cost explorer. It may be in others, I don't know, but otherwise, like, there is no cost. Like
Wow,
it's super cheap.
wow, fantastic.
There is I'm not sure if we learned it from you or we just read about it. There is this gotcha with pricing Lambda. Is like you obviously, if you give more resources to Lambda, then you pay more per second, right? So if you give more CPU, more virtual memory, then the cost of execution will be larger. But if you give more resources, the execution will be faster.
Yeah, it's an interesting one that a lot of people have a hard time figuring out. And often when people are trying to optimize for cost, they reduce the amount of memory, which is actually in a lot of cases,
Where
a dangerous thing to do because you're really restricting the application of the resources that it needs, and it becomes bottlenecked on either CPU or memory.
you probably, question to you, you probably don't, I'm just wondering now out loud, you probably don't gather much giving more resources to Lambda if it waits on the, like, for example, access to the database, right? But if you got Lambda that does the heavy compute, then where you these cases you can actually, I don't know, image processing.
Yeah.
These cases you probably can save money by paradoxically giving more resources to Lambda, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, if you're doing using features like Snap Start, you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the time before the customer requests are coming. So you're using CPU to do all the just-in-time compilation. Um, so it actually means that you could probably reduce the amount of memory and CPU for regular customer requests. So again, it's another further optimization. And I guess the interesting optimization again with your change of Bedrock model is that your Lambda is calling Bedrock synchronously. So you're paying for your Lambda while you're waiting for the Bedrock. So every improvement in Bedrock is also an optimization on top of your Lambda instance.
You are absolutely right, and we never thought about it, and it's probably just because we never had to, because the cost of Lambda is negligible at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you were to scale it to 5,000 or 50,000 people, then you probably could shave off a lot of expenses thinking about that. But obviously at the cost of complexity.
Yeah, absolutely. So this looks like a really fantastic design that you've come up with. You've talked about the advantages and how easy it is to bring in new members of staff. So that's fantastic. It scales with usage. Cost isn't an issue. It sounds like the benefits for the business outweigh the effort that you've had to put into the system. So fantastic.
One comment on the transcribe is that there is, like, we put a huge bet on uh, that LLMs will explode. So as you said, like, we put the huge bet that the cost will go down, and we actually realized it with different, the Amazon Nova Pro coming to Bedrock. But I think there is also space for where the transcription will, the, the costs will go down. And there's, like, if anyone is interested, there is alternative to it which we didn't consider, because for us the way more important was the stability in call center. But there is a transcription API that you can run directly in your browser called Whisper AI,
Okay.
and it's, in theory, it's zero costs.
So there's potential for further optimization there and reducing network latency as well.
Exactly, reducing the costs, and I think a lot will change when the laptops will get more and more laptops as a standard will get more AI chips. Or I don't know how infrastructure will change in general, but when there will be more local AI capacity provided to laptops, right? So if you work locally, you don't have to have networking, etc.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we should have another talk in a year's time and see how the application and the workload has changed. Maybe this will all run locally, and it just sends information for back end processing or analysis. Interesting. Well, thank you very much, Wizzy, for giving us this fantastic introduction to the application And I think there's probably a lot of people out there who are listening to this who will be able to be inspired and say, oh, actually, this would be really useful for a use case that I have. I'm a Spring Boot developer. I can do this too. So thank you very much for joining me today and sharing this fantastic story.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Thank you,
Thank you.
Feta.
Bye.
Bye.